So, Hannibal. I'm basically gonna go over my opinions of the show, the good, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, give it a review, and basically tell you my thoughts on it. So, for those of you who don't know, Hannibal, as I just said, is a TV show, and the basic premise is there's a FBI special agent called Will Graham, and Will Graham has the capacity to basically understand killers. He has a lot of empathy. He's capable of a lot of emotion. So much so that he can go to a crime scene, see what a killer does, and in turn understand how they think and help catch them. And in the series he actually teams up with Hannibal. Now, that's the basic premise of the show. Now, as I will be reviewing it, I will be trying to avoid major spoilers, although I will go into slight minor spoilers. So you have been warned; those are coming. Although I won't say anything really big, but I will put minor spoilers. Nothing too big though. So anyway, it's important to note about my experience with Hannibal in general, not the TV show, the characters. So I just recently saw Silence of the Lambs, and I thought it was pretty boring. I didn't really like it. It wasn't a bad movie, but I just was bored by it, and I didn't really care. Now, I didn't see any of the other Hannibal movies, television shows, whatever there is. And I saw Silence of the Lambs at the same time that I was watching Hannibal, the TV show. In fact, I actually was a season and a half in Hannibal when I watched Silence of the Lambs. And I gotta say, I do like Hannibal a lot better. I mean, you could kind of guess that from the fact I didn't like Silence of the Lambs, but whatever. So, anyway, light spoilers, my opinions. Here we go. So, the good. Let me tell you the good about Hannibal TV show. The actor for Hannibal, Mads Mikkelsen is his name. Mads Mikkelsen, I think, has done a phenomenal job at playing Hannibal. His Hannibal is so good. His acting is I would say probably 10 out of 10. He played Hannibal so well, it blew me away. Him and a lot of the other actors on the show do really well, but he blew it out of the water. He is an amazing Hannibal. He makes it believable. He makes you think he's actually a psycho. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but he plays Hannibal so well that it's almost hard to think, wow, this guy is not this way. It's so amazing. And his look, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but even the actor looks a little bit off. I guess the way he plays Hannibal, which he's supposed to, but it's crazy. Hannibal is supposed to be this very polite, sophisticated, dark killer, and he is. Mads portrays him so well. He's so polite, but the scenes where he's violent and in kill mode are just played extremely well. The acting, 10 out of 10, especially for Mads. He severely carried the show, along with some other people. So, another good thing. The way they tie the events that happen in the series together chronologically is it's just amazing. It's groundbreaking to me. Other shows do it very well, and I feel there's very few shows that do it as well as this, where they have events that happen, which, again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but there's events that happen that have far-reaching consequences and that they always go back to. They're very concise with what they do in this series, and it shows. For instance, something happens to Will, right? Will and Hannibal, I would argue, are the two main characters. More so Will than Hannibal a little bit, but regardless. Something happens to Will, right? Will sees a killer kill someone, and right before that, Hannibal might say something to him or might do something with the killer. And that something will have significance of what and how he does it for maybe even a whole season to come. It's insane how well things are planned out in this show and how they always go back to certain things. Now, at times, it seems a bit far-reaching, but we'll get into that later. But how they tie things together is just super good, and everything, well, not everything, but most things have consequences in the series, and consequences that matter. And the other thing is, Hannibal, the way he's portrayed in this series is done so well. Like, I already said, the actor does it phenomenally. Mads Mikkelsen, blows it out of the park. But the way they just show Hannibal, the character, is basically like he's a super genius killer who's very capable and knows exactly what he's doing. And what I mean by that is, like, you would think in certain situations, okay, Hannibal's caught, Hannibal's done, Hannibal's fucked. Like, he's gonna get it straight up his ass. He's gonna get, like, shot in the face. He's gonna get stabbed. There's no way he could get out of this. But Hannibal sets himself up so well with what he does. It's just like he can almost get out of anything. He knows how to conquer any situation. And the way he conquers them, I would say, isn't too varied, but it's varied enough. He can either conquer things through intelligence alone or strength. Those are like his two main things. Strength isn't like he plans, he can kill you. In a one-on-one fight, almost no one wins against Hannibal, and it's like crazy. Because he sets himself up to not lose. And even if he does lose, his main thing is, okay, he'll lose, he won't die, he'll make you think you've won, and then he'll get you somehow. It's insane what Hannibal does with his planning. It really shows you how much of a genius, like, Hannibal Lecter is as a killer. It's really good. That's not to say that the show's all about Hannibal. Like I said before, there's Will. The other good thing about the show is it focuses on others aside from Hannibal. Now, granted, it's not as much as Hannibal and Will, but there are side characters there that are very interesting. You have Jack Crawford, the lead or director of the behavioral sciences at the FBI. He has his little subplot going in and out. You kind of question his motives and just how he is as a person, what he's willing to do, how far he's willing to go, which is very good. You see people on the what's it called? You see people on, like, the team, forensics team, that's what it was. You see people on the forensics team that have their own personality. They're very unique. They each have something about them that makes them unique, and you end out, liking them and how they interact with each other. And I would say they focus very heavily on one. I'm not going to say who, but they very heavily focus on one of them in specific, and they really drive that character forward and show you, like, okay, the other two are interesting, but this one is, like, the main one you're going to pay attention to and has the most going on. So the other characters do get interesting and time to themselves. While it is still about Will and Hannibal, their stories are woven in as well. And, Will is super interesting, like I said. Base value, no spoilers, he has the ability to empathize with the killer. And slight spoilers here, the main thing is, if you can empathize so well with the killer, how do you prevent yourself from becoming one? Because if you can understand how they think, that means you can agree in a way with how they think, or it could even change you. The way it affects Will throughout the series is a very, very, very huge plot point, and I feel they executed that extremely well, up until maybe the end, but that's kind of for the negatives. But anyway, the other thing I love about Hannibal, right? A lot of a lot of TV shows like this end up focusing on what I would say is the aspect of, okay, they introduce characters and their own story that's like fiction, right? And then they introduce, like, killings and murder cases, police cases, and whatnot. And the best thing I could compare it to is, like, for those of you who have seen House or Law and Order or whatever, any show that's, like, similar to this one, where the cast have their own plot, and then there's the overarching plot of what brings them together. And most of the time, the problem with these shows that I feel always happens is the overarching plot of, like, okay, it also happens in Lucifer, by the way. Lucifer is a big proponent of this. What basically happens is you care more about the subplot of, like, okay, what are the characters doing? What's going on with their lives? What's forwarding their story? That's the overarching plot, in a way. I kind of messed up the order of what I said before. But the overarching plot of, like, what's happening with the characters, and then the subplot of, okay, what crime are they solving this specific episode? And usually they're pretty interesting in the first couple episodes, and then afterward you just simply don't even care. Like, okay, I don't care what crime they're solving. I want to see their stories progress. And in Hannibal, it does do that. It does go over, crime stories that they have to solve. But I feel like that's always a back step to the main story of Hannibal and Will and their relationship and just what's going on in the story. Don't get me wrong, the crimes that happen and how they solve them are pretty important, especially for the beginning, because that's when they're setting Hannibal and Will's relationship up, they're setting everything in the story up. But later on, those are more of a plot device to aid in showing Hannibal and Will's relationship, and eventually the whole story is just focused on the subplot, or the overarching plot, excuse me, and uses subplots that are created from the overarching plot. It's not, oh, this guy's a murderer, we have to figure out how to find him. It's, oh, something's happening with Will, something's happening with Hannibal, and they focus on that. And I feel like that's so good. That's what you have to do. A lot of series like House and Lucifer, what ends up happening is I get so bored and I just want to mindlessly go through the majority of the episodes because they're focusing on like a crime or a medical thing that happens. Oh, I have to save this patient, what's wrong? That I don't care about, and it's not furthering the actual story. In this, they actually further the story while keeping those crimes and stuff as an aiding device and eventually just solely focused on the character's story, if that makes sense. Doing this for a first-time thing, I don't know if a lot of what I'll say will make sense. Hopefully Hunter can edit this correctly to make it make sense and add some nice visual aids. But, hey, it's a new thing. We'll see how it is. So anyway, other great things about the series. Decently big-named actors are in this. The main one is, like, Orpheus. They got Orpheus from the fucking Matrix. Like, that's cool as shit, yo. That's fucking nice. And he does a good job playing Jack Crawford. His Jack Crawford is really fucking good. The pacing of the show, I would like to say, is really good. Like I said before, in Lucifer and House, a lot of the time, the pacing ends up being slow, where there's episodes where, like, okay, it's mid-season, around there, nothing big's happening, you're getting bored, you just want to get through it to find the good parts. In Hannibal, I don't feel that there is a lot of moments like that. Don't get me wrong, there are some. But I would say overall, there's very few moments where I was just like, okay, I want to see what happens next. Can we just hurry up and get on with it? Almost everything in Hannibal, in the 3 seasons that it has, was very good to watch. It was amazing. And almost no time did I feel like, oh my god, this is boring, I want to get through it. I would say it maybe happened like 2 or 3 times. And that's when they were focusing on something that I knew was just like a throwaway. But that's very sparingly used, which is really good. One big thing that I have to give credit for, the seasons and how they end are very memorable. Like, the way season 2 ends, in my mind, I think I'll always remember how season 2 of Hannibal ended. It was such a good ending, and it did set up for season 3. Like, okay, there's going to be a season 3. But it's just so well done. It's basically like a crescendo. It's like, oh, you have all these events leading up to this huge, like, build-up, and the build-up leads to, like, a huge, main event, and the main event was done, like, really, really well. I would say that's a very good strong point of the series. The endings to, like, season 1, 2, and I would say arguably 3, again, we'll get in that later, is very well done. The series has very good points that are memorable and are presented and executed very well. Like I said, Lecter is very powerful. Despite what you think is happening, Lecter knows what he's doing. And what he does, like I said, has consequences for everyone involved. And the constant thing I see, right, is the struggle of choices and the sides that are presented to us. Will constantly has this struggle throughout the whole series. Is he a killer or is he a good person? Because he can empathize with killers, he starts to understand their point of view. And because of that, he kind of questions, like, does he like killing? Does he want to do this? Does he want to do that? And is it what's really right and wrong? And there's always a struggle of good and bad, I would say. And then what people choose has, like, very definite consequences that you definitely see, and the consequences change them, and it's super good. Uh, the character development because of these choices end out mattering. There's characters that change because of events that happen. One in particular, which I really fucking didn't like, but that's not a bad thing. Let me give, again, slight spoilers, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. There's a character in the series called Alana Bloom, right? Alana Bloom, in the beginning, starts off as a character I really liked. I'm not going to tell you why I liked her, because that might give away some stuff, but I really liked her. She went through a lot of conflict in the story. A lot. And because of that, this conflict changed her. Now, personally, I think what she was doing because of the conflict, how she went about it, was fucking stupid. But the way it changed it to me makes sense, and how she is now, I hate her compared to what she was before. But just because I hate her doesn't mean it's bad character development. That's one thing I like about the series. It does things that I don't agree with, but are, to me, realistically understandable. And just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not good. In fact, because I didn't like what happened, to me kind of means it is good. It's good storytelling. Like, okay, what I want isn't always what I'm going to get. And what actually happened is not something I like, but it makes sense for the story, and it makes sense on how the person would actually react. And Alana Bloom is basically like a big character like that for me. I liked her in the beginning. A lot of stuff happened to her in the series, and it changed her in ways that made sense, and I didn't like how she ended out. Because when you see a character you like end out in a way that you don't like them anymore, you get upset. And for a series to be able to upset you means it has emotional grip on you, and it's powerful enough to even get that, which shows like how good of a story it is. Getting near the end of the good things. For those of you who know Hannibal, like, you know, the whole lore behind everything, you'll know there's a doctor there called Frederick Chilton. He's basically a fucko. I'm just going to say that right now. He's basically a fucko. That's not even a spoiler. He's just a fuckhead. And the acting, again, for him, I thought was, like, near close to Mads Mikkelsen's, like, Hannibal. His acting as Frederick is so, good. He's basically supposed to be, like, a sniveling little doctor who's trying to get up in the world, even though he's really not, like, good at anything. He tries to take, like, little sneaky ways out. He tries to, like, you know, go past the rules. He does very shady shit. And his character is truly shown in a lot of ways by the actor. I don't know his name. I'm not going to look it up because I'm fucking lazy. But the actor for Frederick Chilton really did a good job, like, presenting just how much of, like, a sniveling little worm he is. And it was fucking amazing. Which brings me into my last, I would say, wholly good point for the series, as we're nearing 19 fucking minutes of this shit. It's, just because you know what happens, like, because I saw Silence of the Lambs, right? I know no matter what happens, Dr. Lecter's gonna live. I know no matter what happens, there's certain characters that will live. Jack Crawford, Chilton. Because they're in Silence of the Lambs, I know no matter what happens to them, they will not die. And usually that would be off-putting for me. That's very off-putting to me when I see sequels of stuff, even though, like I said in the beginning, I don't know about anything else but Silence of the Lambs, which I saw after I started this. But regardless, when I know something is, like, guaranteed, it kind of puts me off. But what they did in this series surprised me. Just because you know the characters lived doesn't mean they're safe in many ways. In many ways, certain characters get dismembered, get scarred, get brutalized, and this is kind of where I think the show takes liberties that I think is great, that I think many shows should do. The liberties it takes is basically, okay, in Silence of the Lambs, you see, let's say, for example, Dr. Chilton. Dr. Chilton is alive, he looks well, he's not, you know, anything or whatever, and he's fine. He's still a slimy greaseball, but he's, like, fine. What they'll do in Hannibal is they'll take a character like Chilton and they'll do things to him where he would not look the way he should look in Silence of the Lambs based on what has happened to him in Hannibal, the TV show. If that makes a look of sense. Basically, they take things that logically, chronologically, do not make sense for how characters went through this and look how they look in the future movies. So in essence, they kind of ignored the future movies to a point, which I think is great. Again, they took liberties to make the characters go through things that would have future implications that they just ignore for the other movies. In essence, they're kind of creating their own little universe where, hey, we know that Dr. Chilton needs to stay alive for Silence of the Lambs because he's in there, but we're going to ignore how he looks in there, and we're going to do things to him in Hannibal, per se. Which is super good, because it brings elements of surprise, and it actually makes it so things that happen in the series you wouldn't expect. Because you're like, oh, this person, let's say Jack Crawford, for instance. Jack Crawford, we know he's in Silence of the Lambs. We know he's going to be okay. Even though he's a white man in that and a black man in here, we know he's going to be fine. And you might be surprised to what happens. To any character you think will be alright, they might not be, is basically what I'm saying. And that's great. I wish more shows did that were prequels. I think that's one of the best things I've seen of this series. Because I was thinking, again, I might be overstressing this point, but I was thinking, oh, I know these people are going to live. I know these people are fine. I know X, Y, and Z are going to make it out, no problem. But they don't. And I was surprised. I was like, holy shit. They just ignored, like, kind of keeping continuity. And it was insanely good. That's really good. So those are basically the goods. God, I didn't know how long this was going to go, but it's kind of going for a bit. So anyway, getting into the bad. And I want to preface this with, like, I wouldn't say it's, like, ultimately bad. There's good and bad to everything, but these are kind of the negatives I saw. Now, they're in no particular order, so, you know, the thing I say first doesn't mean this is the worst thing or the least worst thing. It's just I'm saying them in random order, and some of them are very big negatives, and some of them might be big negatives. Some of them might not. So, a little bit of the negatives, right? So, like I said, the show isn't only about Hannibal and Will. The show is also about the other side characters. And the problem is, you actually end out liking a lot of them. Like, I'll give a slight spoiler. The forensics team. The forensics team, you actually end out seeing they have unique personalities, and you end up liking them, but they don't get as much time as other people because they're way, way in the back. And aside from one person in the forensics team, you really don't see a lot of them, and you end up wanting to see more. At least I did. I thought, like, their dynamic was really cool. They're very funny. They're very interesting. They're unique on how they do things. And they showed little glimpses of like, oh, look, this is what they're doing. This is how they do it. We could go more into it. But then they just stop and don't do it. I don't know if that's because of time constraints or whatnot, but I'm really sad to see they didn't go further with other characters. And in a way, they focused, I think, a little bit too much or didn't elaborate on other characters other than the main cast, aka Will and Hannibal. Sometimes the way Hannibal works also doesn't even make a lot of sense, right? So, this might be slight spoilers, but Hannibal basically is in a complicated relationship with Will. And Hannibal does things, and I don't know if these are because it's a part of his plan, because we don't see if these things have anything really to do with the plan. Like, you would think, okay, let's say, for instance, Hannibal's planning to eat Will. And then people find him planning to eat Will, and then they free them, and then Will, knows, hey, you tried to eat me, and then just goes straight back to him. It's like, and Hannibal doesn't try to eat him again. The question is, was that a part of his plan? Because it doesn't show later on that it really mattered or did anything. It was kind of like Hannibal did some stuff that just didn't make sense for his character. While the character they did mostly pretty well, I would say about 5% of the stuff Hannibal did in the series didn't make a whole lot of sense. Which, again, 5% is pretty good. But there was some stuff that I just questioned, like, what? The way they set up Hannibal as a character, why would he do this? It doesn't make sense. But, that's that. Maybe they're just trying to show he's like a psychopath, and psychopaths don't make sense. But anyway. Sometimes in the series, and this is a big thing I personally have an issue with, and it kind of waxes and wanes based on my personal bias for a series. If I like a series, I'll kind of ignore this. But if I don't like a series, I'll bring this up almost always. They downplay a lot of things, and you kind of have to suspend your belief to believe that things are happening the way they are. I'm going to be honest, and this is slight spoilers, Hannibal gets away with a lot of shit. Like, throughout the series, there's the little crimes that happen that, serial killers do, psychopaths do, other than Hannibal. And then Hannibal also is doing things throughout the whole series. And you would think, okay, either the people would logically say this and out him, either they would find this piece of evidence and nail him to the cross, or something would happen. The amount of stuff that Hannibal gets away with, honestly, at some points, it's just baffling at how much he just gets away with. It's insane. And sometimes you have to just believe, okay, this is either coincidence he got away with this or he was lucky. But it happens a little bit too often to where it's like, wow, that happened like a lot. And that was one thing I didn't really like, because it kind of downplays some of his intelligence at some points, that like people, or that he got away with this. And it kind of makes just things seem dumb at times, like, wow, the people aren't putting this together. It's like, come on, you got to be kidding me. Hannibal is a part of almost every like murder, and they don't suspect him at some points. It's like, okay, like what's going on here? My biggest, I would say, bad thing is how they should have ended the series and how it actually ended. Slight spoilers. In season 3, right, I would say every season had a really strong ending, including season 3. The final episode and ending of season 3 was very nice. It did leave a little open-ended, but that's, whatever. They have to kind of allude to how the movies tied things up, I would say. However, season 3 had something happen in the middle of the season. There was like a break in the middle of the season where something huge happens. And I felt if they ended it on that note, season 3 would have been wrapped up perfectly. And then I feel like because they didn't, they added more episodes and then led to the actual ending of season 3. That to me felt kind of just like an add-on DLC sort of thing. I was like, okay, I mean, it's nice. It's not bad what they did. But if it ended on the note it did in the middle of season 3, it would have been, I think, almost like perfect. It would have been ended almost perfectly. It sets up for all the movies and everything as far as I know. And it was just perfect. That's all I have to say about that. It was great. And they didn't do it. And again, it wasn't bad. It just felt like unnecessary adding on. Like, what is it called? Gran Camino for Breaking Bad. I heard, like, I didn't actually see it. But I heard from people that they said it wasn't needed. It's nice to see, but it added kind of nothing to the story. And we already knew everything, and they could have ended it off. It was basically like that. Another thing I didn't like was the visuals and just what they kind of pushed, right? So Will, with his ability to empathize almost completely with anyone, they kind of try and show you it in weird ways. And at a certain point, I would say, especially in season 2, when they delve really hard into it, it does do very well in that respect. It shows you like, okay, Will's mentally not okay. He's a little shaky, and that's affecting his perception of reality. I thought that was great. However, they push it certain times way too far, where it's just like you're being bombarded with visuals of just like reality warping, and it's just all the time. And I feel like it's like if a company has this new thing that they can do, right? Like, let's say this company can make this really cool effect for their movies. But because they can make this really cool effect, they just overuse it to all shit. I feel like that's kind of what happened with Hannibal. They have really cool scenes where it's like reality is getting distorted through Will's eyes, and you're seeing it, you're like, wow, okay, I'm seeing what Will is seeing. It's interesting. But I feel like they just overuse it sometimes. And it's like, it gets a little annoying. Like, yo, I know Will's like seeing reality in a different way, but why do we have to keep seeing it? It's kind of a little overused, I would say. Not too big of a deal, but a little overused. So this next point kind of goes off of what I said was a positive. In the series, Hannibal is almost like God, and it's kind of annoying. Basically, Hannibal in the entire series, if you think you've got him, you don't. And a lot of people say, don't play with Hannibal. The people in the fucking series themselves even know, don't play with Hannibal. He knows what he's doing. He will get you. And I don't know why no one listens to this advice, because it's true almost every single time. Almost every single time you see something bad happen to Hannibal, he either doesn't care that it happened because it doesn't matter, it doesn't interrupt his plans, or it's a part of his plans. I cannot think of a time when something happened in this series that Hannibal really did not plan for or expect that he couldn't, like, that really messed him up and put a wrench in his plan. Nothing like that happened. He's basically God. And he's so smart, which I like. I love characters that are strong and smart like he is. But at a certain point, it gets like a little ridiculous. Like, okay, this guy is being surrounded by three dudes. Hannibal, three trained killers with guns. Hannibal somehow is able to just actually win against them, which is insane. And again, at certain points, Hannibal doesn't win, but it either doesn't matter that he doesn't win, or it's a part of his plan to not win. And it's kind of like, okay, Lecter's God. And the other thing is, like I said before, a lot of the things Lecter does, I question. You're like, okay, why did he do that? A lot of the series, it's called Hannibal for a reason. It is about Hannibal. And you want to know, okay, why is he like this? What is he doing? And don't get me wrong, they do go into his backstory a little bit. It is very interesting. But the one thing I don't like is just like, okay, this guy can basically do whatever he wants, get away with it, right? And the main reasons they have, the explanations they have, oh, what the hell? Yeah, no, you have to quiet down, phone. The main reasons they have and explanations is just he wants to and he's curious. Those are the explanations they give. Not because of, I mean, you know, realistically, how could you describe what a psychopath does? But, like, I felt those were a little weak because if you're a psychopath, right, if you're like Hannibal and you're eating people, the logical thing to do, and they said this in the series, this is a slight spoiler. In the series, they said, this man is so good at what he does, if he does not want to get caught, he will not get caught. He just won't. He's so good at what he does. He does not leave evidence, which is, again, how could you not do that? Eventually you have to slip up. With how much Lecter does, too, it's surprising he doesn't slip up. But it's just like, if Lecter wanted to go about things, he could go entirely uncaught and just do his thing. And the only reason bad stuff will happen to him is kind of because he lets it and he's curious. A lot of this series is just Hannibal saying, fuck it, why not? Because he just doesn't care and he's just curious. And I was like, I don't know, that's kind of weak to me. I got annoyed by that. This man who's all-powerful, a psychopath, and loves eating people, just eventually, like, kind of gives himself up and gives that up because he's interested in other things. Where then it calls the question, okay, if he likes eating and killing people so much, why does he give it up? It just doesn't make sense. So, to end it off, I guess that's the last negative. Those negatives, I would say, are not that bad. A lot of the positives were, like, extremely good positives, and the negative was, like, aside from how Season 3 ended, which isn't even a bad thing, it's more of just, like, nitpicking, there's very little negatives I have to say about this series. So, overall, those are my opinions of this series. The positives were, like, amazing, outstanding. I say, if not being a pioneer in its, like, field, I think a lot of shows could take stuff from what Hannibal has done and just do themselves better, like TV series shows, and just do it better. It was an amazing story, very interesting through and through, very little negatives. The negatives are honestly just me nitpicking. So, at the end of the day, my review of Hannibal, I would give this 9 out of 10 Mads Mikkelsens. This series was damn fucking good. If you're thinking about seeing it or haven't seen it, you should see it. It's mainly for people who are, like, into, you know, police shows or, like, want to learn about psychopaths or just want to see an interesting story. I think the story is really interesting, and if you're at all interested in just seeing, like, either powerful people at play with Lecter, psychopaths, police stuff, or action or mystery, anything of that sort, you should watch Hannibal. Very good watch, and I enjoyed it immensely. 9 out of 10 Mads Mikkelsens. So, again, this is the first time I'm doing a commentary, you know, not playing any games, focusing my thoughts, you know, actually trying to plan this out, even though it may not seem like it. I actually wrote down a little list of points I wanted to cover. If you guys liked it, tell me. If not, I guess tell me. Again, I don't even know if this will go out as it is. But, to something new. I hope you enjoyed.